Hello, everybody. This is Professor Kalabata, and I just want to give a couple of comments for the rough drafts of Essay 2 to give you some suggestions about how to revise. So here's Mark Antony Lopez. This is your rough draft. I'll just say a couple of comments about this one first. So let's just read through a little bit of it out loud. The introduction, intellectual growth is somebody's ability to improve how they think and organize their thoughts as they learn and grow. I believe the best type of intellectual growth is not simply being intellectually mature, but becoming intellectually mature through personal growth and maturity. Okay, so we're getting sentences referring to personal growth in general up here at the beginning of the intro. Let's go down a little bit. Let's look here. This lack of different ideas keeps them and the people who think like them too ignorant and stubborn. I believe that people need to experience new ideas and differing opinions. Okay, and then you would start referring to the cave, like with Plato. Okay, so one of the first things I would say about the intro is Mark Antony, you've got some pretty good ideas where you're talking about personal growth in general. Remember with Essay 1, we talked a little bit about how you want to start in the beginning talking about things in general and then work towards something specific. So in the very beginning, the first couple of sentences, talk about intellectual growth in general, talk about human behavior in general, what people do, what people don't do. And then as you get towards the second half of the intro, try to get a bit more specific with what the rest of the essay is going to be about. So you don't want to get too specific in the intro. Start getting more specific in the body of the essay. But there's kind of a fine line you want to walk here with the introductory paragraph. The introductory paragraph shouldn't get too specific yet, but it needs to be at least a little specific to tell us what you're going to talk about in the rest of the essay. So one of the things I notice about this intro paragraph is it's got pretty good ideas about intellectual growth in general, but then in the second half of the paragraph, we need some more specific stuff about what direction this particular essay is going to go in. So give us a thesis statement, talk a little bit about yourself and some of the personal experiences you'll talk about in the rest of the essay, and then give us a thesis that gives us a main idea for what the rest of the essay is going to be about. So we get a lot of general thoughts in the intro paragraph here. We need it to be a little bit more specific in the second half of the intro paragraph. Let's just look at a couple of things in the body. I believe that the concept of intellectual growth is related to Plato's allegory. Okay, so we're getting references to the reading assignment. As humans, we have an innate need to connect. Let's see. I think the very concept of the cave fits very well. Okay, where people mostly post their opinions and hide back in the cave. The concept of the prisoner seems to represent the people who listen to, likes and shares. Social media. So some pretty good, interesting connections between social media and Plato's allegory of the cave. So I like that idea. That's compelling to the reader. We're waiting for specifics. So what I see in this essay is, remember, let me get our PowerPoint presentation up here. So this is the PowerPoint presentation for Module 2. And some of it is a little bit of a review from Module 1. Remember the support sandwich, okay? Claim, support, and interpret. And with Module 1, remember we talked about how if you're making lots of comments about things in general, what you probably have is you're giving us lots of claims. And we're lacking the support, the specific detail. So, and if we look at Mark Antony's essay, so Mark Antony, you've got some pretty good claims. Okay, you're telling us about people in general and things in general and social media. You're starting to make connections between social media and Plato's allegory of the cave. What we need now I guess what I'm saying is you're giving us a lot of top pieces of bread. You're stacking lots of top pieces of bread on top of each other. And then what you need is the meat and cheese. So what we need, if we look back at your essay, social media seems to have given rise to people who are more representative of the other prisoners chained in the cave. Okay. Yeah, pretty good. Let's back up a little bit here. Okay. I believe the concept of intellectual growth is related to Plato's allegory of the cave. As humans, we all have an innate need to connect with other people by having our thoughts and opinions heard and listened to. But as humans, we also need to be correct. All right. Now, right there. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can see that. But right here at the bottom of page 1, right there between those two sentences, that's where we need, for instance, one experience that I've had, or when I go online and I look at Facebook, this is the type of thing that I see. I see people saying this, or one time I had an experience where I saw. Okay, so you need a specific experience here, and then you can pick up. I think the very concept of the cave fits very well with social media. So, okay, right? I feel like that's almost kind of a bottom piece of bread. So we're missing the meat and cheese. We got some pretty good stacks of bread, but you need the meat and cheese. And then as you get down here towards the second half of the paragraph, so now we're going on to the top of page 2. Let's see. The concept of the prisoner seems to represent the people who listen to other people's opinions instead of, okay, so again, this feels like a bottom piece of bread to me. And right here, right in there, between these two sentences, we need a quote. So, for instance, in The Allegory of the Cave by Plato, Plato says, quote, and this is probably where you give a quote describing the prisoners in the cave, and then you close the quote, you finish it, and then you talk about how what this quote demonstrates is the reason this connects to social media is because, and you're already sort of doing that, right, in this second half of the paragraph. So let me go back to the PowerPoint again. So, all right, so Mark Antony, I feel like you have a lot of top pieces of bread. You sometimes also have bottom pieces of bread, and you're missing the meat and cheese in the middle. So give us specific examples, and then connect those specific examples from your personal experience or your personal observations to quotes from Plato. And let me look at one more. Let's look at Dejane Meadows, last name Meadows. I'm so sorry if I'm screwing up your first name. So let's see. Social class in schools plays a major role in where some people are placed in society. In most cases, public schools have less resources than a private school or an executive elite school. My claims are supported by my experience seeing firsthand how teachers, parents, and students on the environment. Okay, so yeah, this is an interesting contrast with the first essay we looked at. Remember with Mark Antony's essay, let's go up here. Okay, so he had an intro paragraph that was longer, and it had some pretty good comments about people in general and intellectual growth, but we needed specific detail that told us what the rest of the essay was going to be about. So as we go into the first paragraph in the body of his essay, as we get to the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2, we can see that he's starting to talk about social media, which is an interesting connection to Plato. So there needs to be, in the second half of this intro paragraph, in the second half of this intro paragraph, Mark Antony needs to talk about social media and how he's going to connect Plato to social media, and maybe even give us a little bit about some of your own experience about social media without going into too much detail yet. But social media should be in the second half of this intro paragraph. Now let's go back to Dejane's essay. Okay, so here we get some pretty good detail about where her essay is going to go. So we know she's going to talk about her school experience. She's going to talk about teachers and parents and students. And social class causes separatism because people... So we know that she's going to talk about her own school experience. She's going to talk about teachers and parents. And she's also going to connect the idea of social class to all this. So we have a pretty good idea where the essay is going to go. But the intro paragraph is a bit short. I would say it's a little underdeveloped. And so it's kind of like Mark Antony's intro had some pretty good ideas about human behavior in general, but needed to give us some specific detail about where the essay is going. Dejane gives us some pretty good detail about what she's going to talk about in the rest of the essay, but the intro is a bit underdeveloped, so she needs to spend a little bit of time giving us a little bit more detail about things. I'm sorry, not detail. She needs to start off kind of broad and general and talk a little bit more about human behavior for a couple of sentences, and then get into where her essay is going to go. And so, let's see. Let me look. My childhood school experience. Okay, so good. You told us what you were going to talk about in the intro, and here we go. We're starting to talk about it already. Decent paying jobs. We're able to send them to school. We had teachers who would teach by engaging us. At a young age, school taught me to learn and build my interpersonal skills. Elementary school, my grandmother was a 30-year kindergarten teacher. So, okay, so we're getting some good detail, some specific detail. I feel like I excelled, was an honor roll. I had to transfer to a school in a different district. From the end of 8th grade through my outlook on education began to change. All right. The environment was more working class. Okay, so we can tell that Dejane is going to connect her school experience to the Jean Anion article. I had an algebra teacher that would write the math question on the board and then write the answers the last 10 minutes of class. He never taught us the formulas on how to even get the answer. He just sat on his computer. Oh, so sad. Okay. So we're getting some pretty good examples from her personal experience. Another example is there being 30 or more students. So, all right. So with this one, we're getting some pretty good personal experience examples. Here's a pretty good one about what the teacher was doing. Here's an example of an ineffective math teacher that would just sit on the computer and then write, like right there. Let me make it a little bit bigger. I'll make my X bigger. Like right there, where I put the X. That's where we need a bottom piece of bread. So remember, let's go back to the PowerPoint. So Dejane is giving us some pretty good meat and cheese, some pretty good specific examples from her personal experience. And then she's going on and starting to talk about another example right there. So I'd say where I put this X right there, do a couple of things. Let me go back. Whoops, that's Mark Antony's. No, sorry. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. So there's some pretty good meat and cheese there. Then give us the bottom piece of bread. So here's the example. Here's the example with the math teacher. And then right here where the X is, give us a couple of sentences where you say what this example illustrates is, or the lesson of this example is. And then remember what we want to do in Essay 2 is, I've talked about this a couple of times, you want to do the double-decker sandwich. So remember this slide from the PowerPoint presentation. You want to try to get, I know I have a lot of fun with the pictures. You want to connect your own personal experience, your personal observations and your personal experience to at least one of the readings. So here's Plato and here's Jean Anion. And I'm sorry, I think that's Socrates and Jean Anion. So make connections between at least one of our readings. You don't have to refer to both, but at least one of them. So give quotes from one of our readings and connect those quotes to your own personal observations and experiences. And so try to do, in the first essay, we worked on the support sandwich. In this second essay, try to do the double-decker support sandwich. So like looking at Dejane's essay as an example, let's go back. So here she sets up, we've got a top piece of bread up here. From the ending of 8th grade year through high school, my outlook on education began to change. High school kind of felt like, okay, so I can see this is the top piece of bread. This is giving us an opinion about what was going on and how she was changing, and it's setting up the example. And down here, we get the example. So up here's the top piece of bread. And then we get the example right here with the math teacher that is the meat and cheese. And then right here, we need the bottom piece of bread. So what this example demonstrates is, the lesson of the example is, and then when you finish that bottom piece of bread, then try to give us a quote from Plato. Or, I'm sorry, I think you're connecting it to Jean Anion. So when you give us the bottom piece of bread where you talk about what the lesson was with the math teacher, then after that, give us another sentence that says something like, this connects to what Jean Anion was talking about because, and in fact, let's look at Jean Anion. All right. So in fact, the math teacher, I feel the math teacher example from Dejanay's essay fits nicely with stuff that I remember from maybe the working class school. So here's the working class school section. In other areas of math, work is also carrying out often unexplained, fragmented procedures. For example, the teachers led the children through a series of steps. Okay, so here we go. This is a nice paragraph right here that fits nicely with what Dejanay is saying. You know, her own math teachers seem to exhibit a lot of the behavior patterns of the math described in the Jean Anion article in the Working Class School. So give us the bottom piece of bread that tells us about this example, and then tell us this connects to Jean Anion because, and then give us a quote from Jean Anion, and then give us a bottom piece of bread again for Jean Anion. You know, this quote from Jean Anion is significant because the lesson is that, and then this connects to my own personal experience because, and then you see that you use this bottom piece of bread to connect, to tell us how the quote and your personal experience connects. So up here, you get your own personal experience in the top layer of meat and cheese. Then you talk about that example, and then you set up you set up a quote. How does and then give us the quote, and then talk about the quote, and then don't just talk about the quote, but tell us how the quote connects to the personal experience you gave us earlier in the sports sandwich. Okay, and good luck on essay 2, everybody.